Guess what, babe? How about an open marriage? I blurted out one evening, half joking, half curious. The look on Mark's face was priceless, a mix of shock, confusion, and was that curiosity? After 8 years of marriage, things had become, well, let's just say, predictably boring. So, when I suggested the idea of an open marriage, I honestly thought Mark would cling to me, insisting we didn't need anyone else. But to my surprise, after a long, thoughtful pause, he agreed. His hesitation was clear, his voice uncertain, yet he said yes. I plunged into this new arrangement with a mix of thrill and nervousness. My first few dates were exhilarating. I felt like a teenager again, sneaking out for rendezvous, experiencing that rush of new connections. But it wasn't just about the thrill. It was about feeling desired, something that had faded in our routine life. Mark, on the other hand, was more cautious. He didn't dive into the dating pool right away. Instead, he spent nights on his laptop, probably researching the do's and don'ts of open marriages. It was kind of cute, in a way. Then, he met her. Sophie, a colleague from his office. They started with coffee dates, then dinners. I noticed the changes subtly at first. The way his eyes seemed to have a new spark, how he'd hum to himself while making coffee in the morning. It was like watching him wake up from a long slumber. I won't lie, it stung. Here I was, thinking this open marriage thing would make him realize how much he needed me. But instead, he was blooming, finding a piece of himself that even I hadn't seen. The more I saw him revitalize, the more I felt a twinge of something. Jealousy? Fear? I couldn't put my finger on it. My own escapades suddenly seemed less thrilling. I was out there searching for something I couldn't define, while he seemed to have found it. One night, as we sat on our deck, sipping wine under the stars, Mark brought up Sophie. "She's incredible, you know," he said, a dreamy look in his eyes. That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just casual dating for him, he was falling for her. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself this was what I wanted. Right? A chance for us to explore, to be free. But the image of Mark with someone else, not just physically, but emotionally connected, was unsettling. The turning point came one evening when Mark casually mentioned he'd be spending the weekend with Sophie. Just like that, it was no longer just dates. It was weekends, shared moments, memories being created without me. I started to question everything. Why did I suggest this? What was I trying to prove? And most importantly, what did I really want? The realization hit me one quiet evening alone at home. I missed him. Not the old Mark, but this new, alive version of him. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had pushed him into someone else's arms, hoping it would bring him closer to me. It was time for a heart-to-heart, a real one. I needed to tell him how I felt, that this experiment had taught me more about us, about me, than I'd anticipated. But I was scared of his response, scared that I might have gambled away our marriage for a shot in the dark. "You're really going through with this?" I asked Mark, my voice tinged with a mixture of disbelief and, weirdly enough, jealousy. It was one thing to suggest an open marriage in a moment of wild curiosity, quite another to see your husband getting ready for his first date with another woman. "Yeah, I am," he replied, his tone surprisingly calm. "Are you okay with this?" Was I? I had started this game, but now, watching him dress up for someone else, a knot formed in my stomach. "Yeah, go ahead, have fun," I said, trying to sound casual. After he left, the house felt eerily silent. I was alone with my thoughts, which were a whirlwind. Why did I feel this pang of jealousy? It was my idea, after all. To distract myself, I went through my own plans for the evening, a date with a guy I'd met online. Fun and exciting, right? The next day, Mark and I sat down for a chat. It was time to lay down some ground rules for our new, unconventional arrangement. "We need to be honest with each other. Always," Mark said earnestly. "I agree, and our relationship comes first. Okay?" I added, needing that reassurance. "Absolutely," he nodded. But as days turned into weeks, my adventures in the dating world felt less and less fulfilling. Sure, there was excitement, the thrill of new connections, but none of it felt real. Not like what I had with Mark. Meanwhile, Mark seemed to be getting more engrossed in his new social life. He was always careful to follow our rules, always honest about his whereabouts, but something shifted. There was a new lightness in him, a spring in his step that I hadn't seen in years. I began to doubt my decision. Was this open marriage a mistake? I had envisioned it as a way to reignite our passion, to make us appreciate each other more. But now, I wasn't so sure. The more I saw Mark embracing this lifestyle, the more I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. One evening, as I canceled yet another day to stay in, I realized I was losing more than I was gaining. The excitement of new encounters paled in comparison to the depth of what I had with Mark. But had I pushed him too far away? Was there a way back from this? I needed to talk to him, to express my fears and doubts. But the thought of that conversation terrified me. What if he was happier this way? What if my revelation ended up pushing him further away? I lay awake that night, waiting for him to come home. My mind was a tangle of fears, hopes, and regrets. This open marriage, meant to bring us closer, was drifting us apart, and I wasn't sure how to bridge the gap. As I heard the front door open and close softly, my heart raced. It was now or never. I had to find out if the man I loved was still as invested in us as I was, or if our journey together had reached its final chapter. So, there's someone new, Mark dropped casually over breakfast, his eyes avoiding mine. Her name's Camille. Hearing her name, something inside me twisted. It wasn't like I hadn't expected this. After all, wasn't this the point of our open marriage? But hearing about Camille, a real person with a name, changed everything. Oddly, in the midst of this new development, we had our moments of bliss. Dinners where we laughed like old times. Nights where we cuddled under the stars, reminiscing about our early days. These moments were my sanctuary, a reminder of the love that still existed between us. But as Mark and Camille's relationship intensified, so did my anxiety. It was no longer just casual dates. They were spending entire weekends together. Each time he packed his bag for another weekend away, my heart sank a little more. I tried to keep busy, to not let my mind wander to what Mark and Camille might be doing. I'd go out with friends, try new hobbies, anything to fill the void. But the house felt emptier, the silence louder. One night, when Mark returned from a weekend with Camille, something was different. He was glowing, rejuvenated in a way I hadn't seen in years. He talked about their weekend, about the hike they went on, the little bed and breakfast they stayed at. His eyes sparkled with a joy that used to be reserved for our adventures together. That night, as I lay in bed, Mark's steady breathing beside me, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Was I losing him to Camille? Did he still find the same joy in our relationship? Were our happy moments just remnants of a fading past? The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, smiling when needed, laughing on cue, but inside, I was crumbling. Seeing Mark so alive, so vibrant, but not with me, was more than I could bear. Then came the inevitable. Mark wanted to spend an entire week with Camille. A week, 7 whole days without him. The announcement hit me like a freight train. I nodded, pretending to understand, to be the cool wife I had set out to be. But that night, alone in our bed, the reality of our situation hit me hard. This wasn't just about exploring anymore. We were in uncharted territory, a territory where I was no longer the only woman in Mark's life. As the days passed, the distance between us grew. Conversations became more functional, less intimate. I missed him, not just physically, but the connection we once had. The laughter, the shared secrets, the understanding looks. I needed to confront these feelings, to confront Mark, but fear held me back. Fear of what his answers might be. Fear of facing the truth that maybe, just maybe, our open marriage experiment was leading us down a path of no return. In the quiet of our home, with memories echoing off the walls, I realized it was time to face the music. It was time to have the conversation that could potentially change the course of our marriage forever. I think I've made a huge mistake, I confessed to Sarah, my best friend since college, over a cup of coffee at our favorite cafe. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise as I spilled out my regrets and confusion about the open marriage. Sarah listened intently, her face a mix of concern and disbelief. "You always seemed like the perfect couple," she said, her voice soft. "Yeah, well, perfect is overrated," I replied, forcing a smile. The change in Mark over the past few months was undeniable. He seemed more alive, more vibrant. It was as if Camille had unlocked a part of him that I never knew existed. And that hurt, more than I cared to admit. It wasn't just the smiles or the spring in his step. It was the late-night texts, the weekends away, the way his face lit up when he talked about their adventures. He was growing, evolving into someone I no longer recognize. And the worst part? I was the one who had set this change in motion. The tipping point came when Mark announced he was going on a trip with Camille. Not just a date, not a weekend getaway, but a full-blown vacation. "I'll be gone for a week," he said casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A week, the word echoed in my mind, each reverberation a stab to my heart. I felt betrayed, abandoned. I nodded, feigning understanding, but inside, I was screaming. After Mark left, the house felt emptier than ever. I wandered from room to room, each space filled with memories of laughter, arguments, makeups, and breakups. Now, it was just me and the echoing silence. I tried to distract myself. Work, gym, books, movies, anything to fill the void. But the loneliness was a constant companion, whispering reminders of the happiness that once filled these walls. One evening, as I sat alone with a glass of wine, I realized how much I had changed, too. The confident, adventurous woman who proposed this open marriage was now a shell of her former self, filled with doubt and insecurity. I started to question everything. Our love, our marriage, the very foundation of who we were as a couple. Had I been so blind to think that this wouldn't change us? That we could venture into the world of open marriage without consequences? As the days passed, I found myself longing for Mark's return, not because I wanted to confront him, but because I missed him. I missed us. The us before Camille, before this whole mess. The night before Mark was due to return, I barely slept. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, fear, and underneath it all, a glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. When Mark finally walked through the door, his face sun-kissed and eyes bright, my heart skipped a beat. But it wasn't the happy reunion I had imagined. There was a distance between us, a chasm widened by secrets and unspoken truths. As we sat across from each other at dinner, making small talk, I realized that the next conversation we had would be the most important of our marriage. It was time to lay it all out on the table: my feelings, my fears, my longing for the past, and my uncertainty about the future. If you've enjoyed what you've seen and want to stay updated with more, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to keep bringing you more of the content you love. Plus, subscribing ensures you won't miss out on any of our future updates. It's a win-win. I remember thinking, this is it, the night I win Mark back. Dressed in his favorite red dress, I set the table with candles, his favorite meal simmering in the kitchen. It was like a scene from one of those cheesy romantic movies, but I was desperate. The evening started off well enough. Mark seemed surprised, pleasantly so. But as the night wore on, the familiar distance crept back in. He was there, but not really. His smiles didn't reach his eyes, his laughter forced. It was like trying to grasp onto a shadow. Frustrated, I blurted out, "You seem miles away, Mark. Is everything okay?" He hesitated. Then the dam broke. "I'm in love with Camille," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had braced myself for a lot of things, but hearing him confess his love for another woman wasn't one of them. Anger, sadness, betrayal, a cocktail of emotions churned inside me. "How could you?" I managed to say, my voice trembling. "I didn't plan this, it just happened," he replied, looking genuinely tormented. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I remember fragments: his apologies, my tears, the cold silence that enveloped the house. After Mark went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, the candles now just melted wax. The room, once filled with hopes of rekindling our love, now felt like the stage of a tragic play. I was angry, yes, but beneath that anger was a profound sadness. It was the kind of sadness that seeps into your bones, heavy and unrelenting. I had lost him, not to a whim or a fling, but to love. And against love, What chance did I stand? The next few days were a haze. Mark tried to talk, to explain, but what was there to say? The man I loved, the man I had married, was in love with someone else. Every word, every explanation, felt like salt in an already gaping wound. I oscillated between rage and despair. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to erase every trace of Camille from our lives. But then, in the quiet moments, the reality would sink in, leaving me hollow. Our home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, felt like a tomb of memories. I'd catch glimpses of our life together, photos, mementos, little notes we'd left for each other, and it was like looking at relics of a bygone era. In those moments of solitude, I realized how much of myself I had lost in this open marriage gamble. I had opened Pandora's box, hoping to find excitement and renewal, only to unleash chaos and heartbreak. As I sat there, amidst the wreckage of my marriage, I knew I had to make a choice. I could drown in my sorrow, let it consume me, or I could start picking up the pieces. Pieces of me, pieces of my life. Mark's revelation was a wake-up call, a painful but necessary jolt. It was time to face the truth, no matter how harsh. It was time to decide what came next, not just for us, but for me. Can we talk? I asked Mark one evening, my voice barely above a whisper. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and buried emotions. This was it, the difficult conversation we'd been avoiding since his revelation about Camille. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, a physical manifestation of the chasm that had grown between us. What's happening to us? I started, my voice shaky. Mark looked at me, his eyes a mix of sadness and resignation. I don't know, but I think we need to be honest about where we stand. The conversation that followed was like walking through a minefield. Every word, every sentence was laden with the weight of our 8 years together. I listened as Mark spoke of his feelings for Camille, how they had grown beyond a casual affair. He talked about their connection, their plans, their dreams that no longer included me. It was then that it hit me I had lost him. Not today, not yesterday, but the moment I suggested this open marriage. The man I loved, the man I had shared my life with, had drifted away, carried by the tides of a decision I had made. The realization was a gut punch. I felt a mixture of sadness, regret, and a deep sense of loss. I had opened the door to this path, naively believing it would lead us to new heights of happiness. Instead, it led to the disintegration of the most precious thing in my life. As the night wore on, our conversation became more raw, more real. We talked about our marriage, our highs and lows, the love that had once bound us so tightly. But amid the memories and the tears, there was an unspoken understanding we had reached the end of our journey together. Then came the words I had been dreading but expecting. I want a divorce, Mark said quietly. I want to be with Camille. Hearing it out loud was surreal. Divorce. The end of our story. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if this was happening to someone else. But the pain in my chest, the lump in my throat, they were all too real. We sat there in silence, the magnitude of his words hanging in the air. Part of me wanted to fight, to scream, to plead. But what was left to say? What was left to fight for? The rest of the night passed in a blur. We talked about practical things, the house, our belongings, how to untangle our intertwined lives. But beneath the logistics, there was a profound sense of mourning. Mourning for the life we had built, for the future we had planned, for the love that had once felt unbreakable. As I lay in bed that night, the reality of the situation slowly sinking in, I realized this was not just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of something new, something unknown, a journey of rediscovery, of healing, of finding myself again. I can't believe this is happening, I murmured to myself, staring blankly at the divorce papers on the kitchen table. It felt like a bad dream, one where you try to run but can't move. Mark and I, once inseparable, were now on a fast track to becoming strangers. The initial shock of Mark's decision to divorce and be with Camille left me in a state of denial. This can't be real, I thought. We were supposed to grow old together. But as the days passed, the reality of the situation sunk in. Each legal document, each lawyer's call, a harsh reminder of our unraveling marriage. The divorce process was like navigating a stormy sea. I oscillated between anger, grief, and disbelief. Some days, I'd wake up feeling determined to get through it, while on others, I felt like I was drowning in my emotions. Thankfully, I wasn't alone in this journey. My friends became my anchor. Sarah, with her no-nonsense advice, and Lisa, who just listened as I poured my heart out. They were there through the tearful nights and the endless legal discussions, reminding me that I was stronger than I felt. Then, one afternoon, as I was sifting through old photos, I got a call from Sarah. "Have you heard? Mark and Camille are getting married," she said, her voice a mix of sympathy and indignation. That news hit me like a wave crashing down. Married, he was moving on, not just with his life but starting a new chapter, a chapter that once was ours. I felt a strange concoction of emotions. A part of me still hurt, yet another part felt an odd sense of closure. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, so did my journey of acceptance. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain felt too much to bear, when the loneliness crept in like an uninvited guest. But with each passing day, I found strength in the little things. A morning jog, a good book, a night out with friends. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my house. It was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you reflect on everything that's happened. I realized then that this wasn't just an end, but also a beginning of a new life, a new me. Learning about Mark and Camille's upcoming wedding was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, it was a reminder of what I had lost. On the other, it signified that it was time to truly let go and move forward. In the weeks that followed, I started to rediscover myself, the woman who loved painting, who enjoyed spontaneous road trips, who once dreamed of starting her own business. I began to embrace the possibilities of a future I hadn't planned but was mine to shape. The journey through the divorce and its aftermath was like walking through a storm and coming out on the other side. Bruised, yes, but also stronger, wiser, and with a renewed sense of hope. As I closed the chapter on Mark and me, I realized that life had a way of surprising you. Sometimes, it takes a storm to clear the path for a new beginning. Sitting on the porch, sipping my morning coffee, I realized something profound. The pain that once felt like an endless tunnel now seemed like a distant memory. It was as if I had been walking through a long, dark night and had finally reached the dawn. The healing process wasn't quick or easy. It was a slow, sometimes agonizing journey of self-reflection and discovery. I spent countless nights revisiting our memories, dissecting where things went wrong, and what role I played in the unraveling of our marriage. With each passing day, I learned to forgive myself. Yes, I had made mistakes, but hadn't we all? The important thing was what I learned from them. I realized that love wasn't about holding on so tight that you suffocate the other person. The skirt's still okay, not too wrinkled from the drive. I pat it down, chuck my hair in the rearview mirror. Usual me, usual him, gonna be late again. We've got this whole routine down pat. Him with the important stuff, me with the looking pretty and waiting. Sometimes I think it's on purpose, like showing off how much he matters, how little I do. Doesn't even know it gets under my skin, but God, it does. My phone buzzes. Not him. Some random number. The message makes me smirk. Bored. It says, "Let's fix that." I glance at the restaurant, at the empty seat across from me. Yeah, bored's about right. I type back, "And how do you plan on doing that?" PSA Euro interesting. Not my usual type, all polished businessman like my husband. This guy's got a spark, kinda dangerous. Coffee's just coffee, right? No harm in seeing what he's about. And damn, does that coffee turn into something else? His apartment's a mess, but I couldn't care less. Suddenly, I remember feeling alive. Not just a Euro existing, going through the motions. It's wrong, I know it is, but it's a kind of wrong mixed with so much right. Afterwards, the guilt hits hard. I can't look at my phone on the drive home, afraid of a message from my husband, asking where I am, but, under the guilt, damn, I feel excited too. Haven't felt that in ages. A wicked part of me wants him to know, wants to see the shock on his perfect face, shatter that image he has of our perfect life. Late night at the office, babe. I lie when I finally walk in. He nods, distracted. It's easy, too easy. He barely even looks at me. I get a twisted little thrill out of that I've got this whole other thing going on and he's so clueless. Maybe I kinda want him to find out, a little, just to see him pay attention to me for a change, even if it's for all the wrong reasons. Girls' night tomorrow, I tell him the next day, already mapping out when I can sneak away to meet my coffee date again. His name's Mark, by the way, and he gets me all flustered, like a schoolgirl. I hate that it feels this good, but I can't seem to stop myself. Every lie, every stolen hour. It's like I'm becoming someone new. Scary, yeah, but way better than feeling invisible. The lies flow out of me like they were always there, just waiting to be unleashed. Traffic jam on the highway. I explain about the lingering scent of Mark's apartment on my clothes. Dinner with the big wig clients. I mutter between bites of the meal my husband lovingly prepared, the taste turning to ash in my mouth. My guilt warps into a twisted sense of power. I'm manipulating him, pulling the wool over his eyes, and there's a dark satisfaction to it. But Mark, with his intensity, he throws a wrench in my careful balancing act. It's not enough, he hisses during one of our stolen afternoons. I want you all the way, no more sneaking and lies. The idea of blowing up my life, of the confrontation and the aftermath, it's a heady mix of adrenaline and absolute terror. Part of me craves the chaos, yearns to shatter the perfect image I've always upheld. Yet, the other part, the cautious part, reminds me of the luxurious house, the easy companionship, the security I'd be thrown away for a man who might just be another fleeting thrill. The lies escalate. It's no longer late meetings or impromptu dinners, it's meticulously planned deceptions. I invent an entire work conference, complete with fake hotel confirmations, and a carefully crafted itinerary for my unsuspecting husband. He waves me off with that oblivious smile, wishing me luck. Bring home the big deal, babe, he says, and I almost choke on the absurdity of it all. The weekend with Mark is a whirlwind. We shed the weight of our real lives and become reckless teenagers, hotel sheets tangled, room service trays left untouched. It's a fantasy world, built on stolen time and the promise of a future that may never exist. I tell myself that this is just a fling, a temporary escape from the monotony. I ignore the niggling voice that whispers how easily these lies come to me now. Then it's back to reality, the hotel room replaced by my own pristine bedroom, Mark's arms replaced by my husband's unsuspecting embrace. The joy of those stolen days warps into disgust. His touch is a violation now, his cheerful questions like nails on a chalkboard. With every smile, every gentle word, the chasm between us widens. I want to scream, to confess, to beg for forgiveness I'm not sure I deserve. I crave the relief of the truth. But the other part of me, the part that tasted freedom, that reveled in the danger, she won't let me back down. She's digging in her heels, daring me to go further, whispering promises of power and a life unbound by the rules I used to hold so dear. It's a terrifying, exhilarating battle, and I'm trapped in the middle, unsure which side will claim victory. My phone is a ticking time bomb. Every time it pings, I jump, part slamming against my ribs. I delete Mark's messages with trembling fingers, then delete the deletion history, then triple check to make sure there's nothing left. One tiny slip, that's all it takes to blow everything apart. With every near miss, my anxiety ratchets higher. I start imagining my husband discovering the texts, the look on his face when he sees what I've been saying, what I've been doing. You seem distracted, my husband says one evening, his brow furrowed in concern. I plaster on a fake smile and tell him it's just work stuff, but after he falls asleep, I lie there rigid, staring at the ceiling. He knows, I can feel it. He's not as dumb as I've convinced myself. Panic gnaws at me, making me snappy and irritable during the day. The worst part? It's not just my husband I'm afraid of. Mark's growing angrier. He calls me a coward, says I'm dragging my feet because deep down I don't want to really be with him. His voice grates on my nerves, the sweetness gone, replaced by a demanding edge that sends chills down my spine. His threats aren't outright, but they linger, unspoken yet heavy in the air. Then, my husband throws a curveball. How about a weekend away? He suggests, eyes gleaming with the hope of reconnecting. His attempt at fixing things makes my insides clench. Pretending to be the perfect wife, the carefree lover. I can't stomach the thought. The lie tastes bitter now, the guilt suffocating. The guilt, and the fear that this little getaway is where he'll figure it all out somehow. I can't. I stammer out, big presentation coming up. Can't miss those prep meetings. It's a flimsy excuse, and I can see the disappointment in his eyes. It's the first time I don't just feel guilty, but a flicker of outright cruelty too. I don't want to hurt him, but the idea of getting caught is unbearable. By now, Mark's the bigger threat. He knows where I live, knows about my family, knows the fancy job I'd lose if it all came crashing down. His passion has morphed into a twisted kind of ownership, and I realize the affair isn't a thrilling escape anymore. It's a trap. But the trap of my marriage, with its suffocating routine and fading love, that feels just as inescapable. I'm a hunted animal, cornered on both sides, and I don't know which way to turn. There it is. My husband's phone lights up with a notification, and my entire body goes rigid. Mark's name flashes on the screen, and the message. God, I don't even need to read it to know it's damning. The blood drains from my face. There's a split second where I consider scrambling for some excuse, some insane lie. But the look in my husband's eyes tells me it's pointless. What the hell is this? His voice isn't a yell, it's dangerously quiet, the calm before the hurricane. Shock gives way to an icy rage I've never seen in him before. Gone is the husband I thought I knew. This is a stranger looking at me with utter disgust. What comes next is a blur. I try to make excuses, pathetic lies that shred my remaining dignity. He cuts me off, voice dripping with contempt. Every accusation hits me like a physical blow. Somehow, it escalates even further. We're throwing hurtful words at each other like weapons. It's like a dam bursting, years of unspoken bitterness overflowing, poisoning the room. In the end, I don't even fight it. The lies choke me. It's true. All of it, I say, and the world tilts sideways. Relief wars with a sickening dread as I see the final nail being hammered into the coffin of our marriage. His face is a mask. Get out, he spits out. Each word is measured, laced with a cold finality. That's when the world truly begins to collapse. I fumble with the zipper of my suitcase, throwing in clothes with trembling hands. I have nowhere to go, no one to turn to, except Mark. My heart lurches. He's an awful person. I know that now. But I'm desperate. I dash out the door without looking back. The drive is frantic, tears blurring my vision. He welcomes me with a smarmy concern that barely masks a dark satisfaction. He knows now, knows I'm completely at his mercy. His apartment, once a thrilling escape, feels oppressive. It's not until I'm lying alone on his scratchy sofa, listening to his triumphant snores, that the reality sinks in. I haven't escaped. I've trapped myself again, with a captor far worse than the one I left behind. The freedom I craved, the excitement. It was a fool's game, and I've lost everything playing it. Worse than that, I realize I might not make it out of this trap alive. Every morning, I wake up to the same four walls, the taste of stale victory turning bitter in my mouth. Mark isn't even trying to hide his possessiveness anymore. No calls to my family, no messages to old friends. He's cut me off from the world, proof of his power over me. His attempts to charm me now seem ridiculous, making my skin crawl. Then, under the disgust and fear, something new starts to flicker. Anger. A cold, precise kind of anger. Survival instinct kicks in. If I'm going to get out of this mess, I'll have to do it myself. No more waiting to be rescued. It's a gamble, a dangerous one. But I'm a desperate woman with nothing left to lose. It starts small. Fake smiles replace the sullen glares. I make a show of being interested in his work, asking innocent questions. That business deal sounds amazing, I'll say, batting my eyelashes at him. He eats it up, the fool. His ego is his weakness, and I'm going to exploit it for all it's worth. My compliance is a weapon now, every faked giggle another bullet in the chamber. Behind the act, I'm alert, observing. I sneak glances at his phone while he's in the shower, overhear snippets of his shady conversations. He boasts about past scams, under-the-table dealings, jilted ex-lovers who just mysteriously disappeared. Every dirty secret is fuel, ammunition I carefully collect. One afternoon, when he's out, I risk it. A phone call to my husband's number. I don't identify myself, keep it short. I made a mistake, I whisper, my voice tinged with regret. I was tricked, manipulated. He's dangerous. Please, I need help. Then I hang up, leaving a phantom's plea hanging in the air. My husband. I almost hate him as much as I hate Mark. But he's resourceful, powerful in ways my lover can't even fathom. And somewhere deep down, I think there's still a flicker of the man I married. The man who might just hate Mark more than he hates me. It's a fragile thread of hope, a reckless gamble. But desperate times make for dangerous allies, and in this game of revenge, I'm ready to play dirty. The days stretch into a tense, sickening dance. Mark watches me with narrowed eyes, suspicion hardening his once charming face. Yet, I keep my act flawless. I cook his meals, listen to his boasts about deals that would make a Wall Street crook blush, and pretend his touch doesn't make my flesh recoil. Every second is a strain, like holding my breath underwater. But beneath my facade, I can feel the shift. My husband isn't as passive as I'd assumed. Discreet inquiries start popping up, cracks appearing in my lover's previously untouchable empire. It's subtle at first. Delayed shipments, a stalled project, a disgruntled investor. My lover is smart, but he's also arrogant. He hasn't figured out the source of the attacks yet. His paranoia becomes my weapon. I let slip a slip of the tongue, mentioning an old client's name, someone whose lawsuit against Mark had mysteriously vanished a few years back. The seed of doubt blossoms into an ugly flower of suspicion. He searches my room, scrolls through my phone when he thinks I'm asleep. I let him. There's nothing to find. I'm too meticulous for that. His fear becomes a delicious kind of vindication. Then the counterstrike comes. His biggest deal falls through, a crucial permit revoked overnight. My husband wasn't messing around. My lover explodes. He screams, throws things, accuses me of all sorts of betrayal. It's terrifying, yet a cold part of me watches with steely detachment. I need the chaos to camouflage my next move. The timing has to be perfect. During one of his rages, I slip and fall, hitting my head strategically on the edge of the coffee table. My acting skills are put to the test, channeling years of suppressed rage and disgust into convincingly faked sobs. The next morning, I'm still dazed. He hovers, a strange mix of suspicion and concern. But I'm no longer afraid. While he's distracted, I photograph the faint bruise on my temple, text a trusted friend to stash copies of the evidence at her place. He doesn't notice, too focused on salvaging his crumbling world. The police report feels strangely cathartic. Each word is a blow, my statement a masterpiece of feigned terror and distress. The bruise, the photos of my ransacked room, staged while he was out, the whispers I subtly started about his unstable temper. It all weaves together, a tapestry of damning truth mixed with calculated lies. His violence was the final piece of the puzzle, the trigger that will set my meticulously laid trap snapping shut. The news hits like a deliciously cruel shockwave. Mark's arrest is front-page news. Photos splattered everywhere. Him in handcuffs, the manic rage wiped from his face, replaced with a stark, hollow emptiness. A tiny, dark part of me savors the image, knowing my hand is behind that downfall. Turns out, the law doesn't take kindly to shady business practices and assault charges. His world implodes with spectacular, satisfying speed. Clients vanish, partners turn on him, and the whispers I fueled turn into a roar of accusations. The public loves a good scandal, and mine serves up a juicy one. He's not just a cheater. He's a monster, and I'm the brave victim who escaped his clutches. At least, that's the story everyone laps up. The irony isn't lost on me when my husband reappears. No apology, no tears of lost love. Just that same hard glint in his eyes I now see reflected in my own. Seems we have unfinished business, he says, and it's not a question. He's been wounded, his pride shattered alongside mine. In another life, that might have ignited something like forgiveness. But that world is long gone. What happens next is a testament to just how far I've fallen. We plot together, not like a married couple, but like cold-blooded accomplices. His connections, my newfound knowledge of my ex-lover's dirty dealings, together, we weave a net too tight for a desperate man like Mark to thrash against. Piece by piece, what's left of his empire is ours. We exploit loopholes, call in favors, grease palms were needed. It's surprisingly exhilarating, this ruthless efficiency my husband and I share. Like the affair, it adds a perverse kind of spice to my once bland existence. Only this time, I'm no one's pawn. I'm playing the game, and I'm damn good at it. News of Mark reaches me in snippets my husband casually shares. Prison fights, botched appeals, a growing sense of desperation seeping through his letters pleading for help I never send. The image of him rotting in a cell brings grim satisfaction. He underestimated me, thought I was a plaything to be used and discarded. He's the one trapped now. My life? It's not the happily ever after kind. My husband and I, we coexist. Business partners bound by a shared cynicism, a deep understanding of just how ugly the world can be. We tolerate each other, utilize each other's strengths. Love, trust. Those things seem like relics of the naive woman I used to be. The mirror, it used to show me someone I knew. The wife, the woman with a life I didn't always love, but that was predictable, safe. Nowadays, I sometimes avoid my own reflection. The gleam in my eyes isn't excitement anymore. It's something colder, harder. My hands, once used to arranging flowers or pouring tea, now sign documents that can ruin a person in a heartbeat. I'm playing a role, that's the thing, and scarily, I'm no longer sure where the act ends and the real me begins. My husband, we're effective. Publicly, we're the picture of success, the envy of our circle. Behind closed doors, it's business as usual. Meetings about investments, coldly calculated moves to expand our influence. He's good at it, and it turns out, so am I. There's a chilling satisfaction in ruthlessly picking apart a rival company, spotting its weaknesses, and moving in for the kill. The old me might have been sickened, but this new, battle-hardened woman, she relishes the challenge. Mark, he's a ghost now, a specter I conjure when my ruthlessness needs sharpening. The letter arrives, as pathetic as I expected. His threats have lost their sting. It's my husband who handles it, not with concern, but a quiet ruthlessness that makes me wonder how different the two men really are. Let him stew, he says with a dismissive shrug. He's no longer a threat, but a useful reminder of what's at stake. Useful reminder. That's the crux of it. I watch the letter curl and blacken in the fireplace, feeding off its flames. Mark made the mistake of underestimating the woman desperate enough to destroy herself to hurt him, but he made a bigger mistake still. He handed me power, purpose, and a whole arsenal of dirty little secrets powerful men would kill, or at least bankrupt themselves, to protect. The parties, the deals, the smiles that never quite reach my eyes. It's a whirlwind fueled by something other than joy. There's a restlessness beneath the ruthless ambition, a clawing feeling that this isn't quite enough. My old life was stifling, but this new one, it might just be suffocating in a different way. Sometimes, late at night when the house is silent, I wander into a room decorated in a style I never chose, a reminder of the woman I was meant to be. I touch the velvet sofa, the silk curtains, and wonder if that woman would even recognize the creature I've become. The wife who craved excitement. Well, she got it in spades. But I'm no longer content just watching the world burn. I'm the one pouring gasoline and lighting the match. And that's when the question hits, harder than any of Mark's pathetic threats. What happens when the fire spreads to the arsonist herself? Did I win by destroying those who wronged me, or did I ensure my own ruin with a slow, meticulously orchestrated vengeance? I see the answer, uncertain and terrible, reflected in the window pane. A driven woman, a powerful woman, and somewhere in her shadowed eyes, a lost woman, unsure how to reclaim the peace